speed, precision, legendary engineering. Japanese motorcycles are known for pushing limits, but some pushed way too far. From violent power bands to frames that flex at high speeds, these machines became infamous not for what they achieved, but for what they risked. These are the 12 most dangerous Japanese motorcycles ever built. Number 12. Honda CX500 Turbo, the turbocharged wild card. The early 1980s brought a wave of experimentation in motorcycle engineering, and Honda led that charge with the introduction of the CX500 Turbo. It was the first mass-produced turbocharged motorcycle, a bold attempt to bring car-like forced induction performance to two wheels. But with innovation came danger. Serious danger. At the heart of the bike was a 498 cubic centimeter V-twin engine boosted by a turbocharger. The power output was around 82 horsepower with 56 pound-feet of torque. While those numbers may not seem wild by today's standards, it was how that power was delivered that made the CX500 Turbo such a handful. The turbo lag was significant. Riders would roll on the throttle, feel a moment of nothing, and then without warning the power slammed in all at once. This surge could easily lift the front wheel or unsettle the rear end mid-corner, turning a relaxed ride into a white-knuckle wrestling match. The chassis was on the heavier side for its class, weighing in at 572 pounds wet. Combined with its shaft drive system and relatively soft suspension, the bike handled more like a cruiser than a sport bike. The front forks and rear monoshock were considered advanced for the time, but struggled to maintain stability under full boost. Braking was handled by dual discs up front and a single disc in the rear, which provided decent stopping power but felt overwhelmed during aggressive riding. With a top speed of around 125 miles per hour and a starting price of $4,998 back in the 2018-80s, the CX500 Turbo was fast, flashy, and ahead of its time, but it demanded absolute respect from anyone brave enough to twist the throttle. If Honda's turbo experiment surprised you, what Kawasaki unleashed next didn't just surprise, it terrified. Number 11. Kawasaki H2 Mach 750. The Widowmaker. When Kawasaki released the H2 Mach 750 in the early 1970s, they didn't just launch a motorcycle, they launched a legend soaked in adrenaline and fear. This was a two-stroke inline triple that redefined what street performance meant and terrified an entire generation of riders in the process. Under the tank was a 743 cubic centimeter two-stroke triple pumping out 74 horsepower and 57 pound-feet of torque. That might sound tame on paper today, but the way this bike delivered its power was anything but friendly. The throttle was twitchy, the torque hit like a hammer with no warning, and the front wheel often lifted whether you wanted it to or not. It wasn't just fast. It was unpredictable, explosive, and completely unforgiving. The dry weight of the H2 sat around 454 pounds. Suspension was basic, with telescopic forks in the front and dual shocks at the rear. The frame had noticeable flex, especially at high speeds, and cornering stability was mediocre at best. The brakes were equally insufficient for a bike this powerful, featuring a single disc up front and a drum in the rear. Technology that simply couldn't keep up when the bike was barreling down the road at over 120 miles per hour. Despite these handling drawbacks, the H2 was a hit with thrill seekers who craved acceleration and raw speed over finesse. The bike retailed for approximately $1,495 when it was released, cheap enough to tempt riders, but expensive in other ways. Stories of high-speed crashes, violent tank slappers, and unintended wheelies earned it the nickname the Widowmaker. And for good reason. That was a monster on the road. Now let's head to the dirt, where Suzuki built a bike so dangerous it was nicknamed the Bone Breaker. Number 10. Suzuki TM400 Cyclone. The off-road landmine. In the early 1970s, motocross was exploding in popularity across the United States. Manufacturers rushed to put out bikes that could dominate dirt tracks, and Suzuki answered the call with a machine that would soon earn one of the worst reputations in motocross history. The TM400 Cyclone was a two-stroke single-cylinder dirt bike with a brutal personality. On paper, it looked like a winner. It had a 496 cubic centimeter engine that produced around 40 horsepower and delivered roughly 34 pound-feet of torque. But numbers don't tell the whole story, because this was a bike that punished mistakes with broken bones. What made the TM400 Cyclone so terrifying wasn't just the raw power, it was how that power arrived. The engine's power band was notoriously narrow and unpredictable, delivering a violent surge of torque all at once. Riders described it like flipping a switch. You were either crawling or getting launched. Weighing just 220 pounds dry, the chassis was light, but also wildly unstable. The rear suspension bottomed out easily, and the frame flexed under load, causing serious control issues in corners or jumps. Stopping the TM400 was another challenge. It used drum brakes on both the front and rear wheels, standard for the time, but completely inadequate for a bike capable of highway-level speed on loose dirt. The suspension setup, especially in the rear, lacked travel and rebound damping, which meant riders were often thrown out of position after landings. Combine all of this with a twitchy throttle, and the result was a bike that felt like it was trying to kill you every time you got on it. Retail price at launch hovered just over $1,200, but the real cost came later, when the Cyclone became known as the Bone Breaker. Now imagine taking that kind of unpredictability and putting it into a sleek, high-speed V-twin sport bike. Suzuki wasn't done scaring people yet. Before we dive into the final 9, don't ride out unprepared. We picked our favorite gear so you don't have to. Check the must-have list in the description and make your next ride a safer one. Number 9. Suzuki TL100s, the tank-slapping twin. By the late 1990s, the race to build the ultimate V-twin sport bike was in full swing. Suzuki fired back at Ducati with the TL1000s, a bold, aggressive machine that was as thrilling as it was dangerous. At its core was a liquid-cooled 90-degree V-twin engine displacing 1,096 cubic centimeters. It pushed out an impressive 125 horsepower and delivered about 78 pound-feet of torque. On paper, it looked like a champion, but in real-world riding, it quickly earned a darker reputation. Weighing just 470 pounds wet, the TL1000s was fast, flickable, and brutally responsive. But it came with one major flaw: the rear suspension. Instead of using a conventional shock absorber, Suzuki fitted the bike with a rotary-style rear damper designed to save space. In practice, this damper overheated quickly and faded under hard riding. The result? Rear-end instability, especially during cornering or acceleration, and a tendency to throw riders into violent tank slappers without warning. Even experienced riders found themselves struggling to stay upright when the rear started to misbehave. Suzuki eventually issued a recall and added a steering damper to later models, but the damage was already done. The TL1000s had built a reputation as one of the most dangerous sport bikes of its time. Braking performance came from dual front disc brakes and a single rear disc, which were adequate. But when the chassis was unsettled, no amount of braking could fix the instability. Fuel economy sat around 37 miles per gallon, but most riders never made it to a full tank without a scare. At launch, the bike retailed for approximately $8,900, an aggressive price for its performance. But for many, the ride was a gamble, because when the TL1000s decided to snap back, it did so with no mercy. But danger doesn't only come from design flaws. Sometimes it's raw power that the chassis just can't handle. Enter the next Kawasaki. These aren't guesses. They're backed by hours of digging through owner forums, recalls, and race history. If you're getting value from that, hit that subscribe button and support the grind. Number 8. Kawasaki H1 Mach 3500, the original death machine. In the late 1960s, Kawasaki shocked the motorcycling world with a machine that would forever be known as both a marvel and a menace. The H1 Mach 3500 was a two-stroke triple designed for speed above all else. At its core was a 498 cubic centimeter engine, delivering a blistering 60 horsepower and 37 pound-feet of torque. But that power came at a price. The torque delivery was abrupt and violent, with a power band that hit suddenly and aggressively in the upper rev range. Riders had little warning before the front wheel lifted or the rear tire began to spin under acceleration. The H1 didn't ask questions. It launched. That raw explosiveness made it especially dangerous in the hands of inexperienced riders, and even seasoned veterans needed absolute focus to avoid disaster. The rest of the bike simply wasn't built to keep up with the motor. Suspension was rudimentary, and the swing arm flexed under stress. Braking was handled by a front drum brake and a rear drum brake, standard for the era but completely inadequate for a motorcycle that could exceed 115 miles per hour. Tires were narrow, grip was limited, and high-speed cornering felt more like a gamble than a precision maneuver. For its time, that was an incredible amount of performance, especially when packed into a chassis weighing just 384 pounds dry. Fuel economy hovered around 26 miles per gallon, and the limited tank size meant frequent stops for those daring enough to push it hard. But this wasn't a bike you bought for comfort or distance, it was bought for thrill, and it delivered that in spades. The Kawasaki H1 Mach 3 500 earned a fearsome reputation as the original death machine. It was fast, light, uncontrollable, and unrelenting. Let's fast forward to a time when technology improved, but Yamaha decided to create something so wild it barely stayed street legal. Number 7. Yamaha VMAX, the power cruiser with no rules. Launched in 1985 and remaining in production until 2007, the Yamaha VMAX was never subtle. This was not a bike designed to take corners or sip fuel. It was created to dominate the drag strip and flatten straightaways. At the heart of the VMAX was a 1679 cubic centimeter V4 engine equipped with Yamaha's V-Boost system, which forced additional air into the combustion chamber at higher revs. That system helped it unleash an astonishing 145 horsepower and 90 pound-feet of torque. For context, those were figures more commonly associated with high-performance sport bikes, not muscle-bound cruisers. That power translated into blistering acceleration that left many other bikes in the dust. But it also made the VMAX incredibly dangerous when pushed beyond its limits. The frame and suspension simply weren't designed for aggressive cornering or high-speed stability. The rear shocks, in particular, struggled to keep the back end planted under hard throttle, and the front forks lacked the damping needed to inspire confidence at speed. Braking was handled by dual front discs and a single rear disc, which helped slow the VMAX down, but not always with precision. At over 635 pounds wet, it was a heavy machine to manage during emergency stops. Combine that with a relatively short wheelbase and stiff ride quality, and you had a motorcycle that demanded strength, skill, and respect every time you rolled on the throttle. Fuel economy hovered around 32 miles per gallon, and with a small fuel tank, the range was limited. The starting price for the VMAX during its final years came in around $11,900, which made it surprisingly affordable for a bike with this much brute strength. Now imagine cramming race bike performance into a commuter body. Suzuki did just that, and created a sleeper missile. Number 6. Suzuki GSXR1000, the superbiker's gamble. Back in the late 1980s and early 1990s, Suzuki dropped a bomb on the performance motorcycle world, the GSXR1000. At first glance, it looked like just another supersport, but under the fairings lurked something fierce. Powering this beast was a 1,000 cubic centimeter inline four-cylinder engine that pumped out an eye-watering 145 horsepower and 85 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers, combined with its aggressive design and reputation for speed, put it in the upper echelon of street-legal speed demons. But with that much power came serious problems. The GSXR1000 was a handful at high speeds. Its chassis, while sufficient at moderate pace, lacked the torsional rigidity necessary to handle the violent acceleration and speed this engine demanded. Many riders reported high-speed instability and headshake, especially on uneven roads or while cornering hard. That instability often forced riders into emergency maneuvers, where the limits of the frame became terrifyingly obvious. The suspension setup included conventional telescopic forks up front and a monoshock at the rear, both of which were only moderately adjustable. When pushed hard, the suspension often bottomed out or failed to keep the tires firmly planted, making the bike feel unpredictable during spirited riding. The braking system included dual front discs and a single rear disc, but the brakes were prone to fade under aggressive use. For a bike this powerful and heavy, tipping the scales at approximately 593 pounds wet, the braking performance fell short of expectations. The Suzuki GSXR1000 demanded respect. Inexperienced riders who treated it like a toy often paid the price. With a starting price of $7,299 back in its day, it seemed like a dream ticket to race bike glory. But for many, it turned out to be more of a gamble than they bargained for. Some bikes are fast, others are vicious, but the next Yamaha was almost unrideable unless you were a pro-level racer. Number 5. Yamaha RZ500. The 500cc street racer, produced between 1984 and 1986, was one of the most aggressive two-stroke motorcycles ever released to the public. Inspired directly by Yamaha's Grand Prix machines, the RZ was a street-legal monster that blurred the line between road bike and race bike. At the core of this machine was a ferocious two-stroke, liquid-cooled V4 engine displacing 500 cubic centimeters. It produced a heart-pounding 88 horsepower and 46 pound-feet of torque, numbers that in the mid-80s put it far ahead of the curve in terms of power-to-weight ratio. But that raw performance came with consequences. The RZ had an extremely peaky power band, with all the horsepower arriving in a narrow slice of the rev range. Below that threshold, it felt tame. Cross it, and the bike turned wild in an instant. That explosive surge of power made it incredibly difficult to modulate throttle input, especially for riders unaccustomed to the unpredictable behavior of two-stroke engines. 1 second you were cruising, and the next you were managing a full-on wheelie with no warning. Weighing in at just over 400 pounds wet, the Yamaha RZ500 was incredibly light. While that made it nimble in the right hands, it also made it twitchy and unforgiving. The frame, a steel twin-spar unit, lacked the stiffness needed to harness the engine's sudden bursts of torque. Combined with a soft suspension setup, telescopic forks in the front and dual shocks in the rear, the chassis flexed under load, leading to instability in high-speed cornering or under heavy braking. The braking system was equipped with dual front discs and a single rear disc, but without modern anti-lock systems or advanced compounds, stopping power was barely adequate for the speeds this bike could reach. Top speed hovered around 140 miles per hour, which was thrilling for a mid-80s street bike, but also dangerous, given the chassis limitations. With a launch price of just under $5,900, the RZ500 was tempting for thrill seekers looking to live out their racer fantasies. But for many riders, this Yamaha was less a dream and more a high-revving, high-risk wake-up call. Two strokes were wild, no doubt, but danger came in all forms. The next Honda proves that even four-stroke innovation can melt into mayhem. Still watching after all this madness? Then you know we're not just listing bikes, we're uncovering legacies. Hit subscribe. Stay sharp. Number 4. Honda VF750F, the cam killer. In the mid-1980s, Honda introduced the VF750F, a motorcycle that was meant to usher in a new era of four-stroke V4 performance. At first glance, it appeared to be a technological marvel. The liquid-cooled four-stroke V4 engine displaced 750 cubic centimeters and delivered 76 horsepower and 48 pound-feet of torque. With a price tag of $4,298 when new, the VF750F aimed to deliver cutting-edge engineering to everyday riders. But under the surface, this machine held a fatal flaw. The VF750F quickly earned a reputation for catastrophic engine failure. The culprit, a poorly designed oil delivery system that starved the camshafts at high engine speeds. The result was premature wear, scoring, and in many cases, complete camshaft destruction. Riders began referring to it as the cam killer. What made this issue especially dangerous was its unpredictability. A seemingly well-maintained bike could suddenly suffer engine seizure while accelerating on the highway or mid-corner at speed. Situations where mechanical failure could easily become life-threatening. Handling was another issue. The VF750F was relatively heavy for its class, weighing in at 594 pounds wet. While it featured a full steel frame, the rigidity of the chassis was not up to the demands of aggressive riding. The suspension setup included conventional front forks and a Pro-Link rear monoshock, both of which were soft by modern standards. Under spirited riding, the bike would wobble under load, particularly during fast transitions and corner exit. Braking was handled by dual front discs and a single rear disc, adequate for casual riding, but lacking bite when pushed to the limit. Despite its promising engine layout and sleek design, the VF750F became a cautionary tale in motorcycle engineering. It was a machine that punished hard riding not with wear, but with total mechanical failure. A bike that could leave you stranded or worse without warning. So far, we've covered turbos, two-strokes, and V-twins, but the next bike on this list is none of the above. It is a machine so powerful it had to be banned from public streets entirely. Number 3. Kawasaki Ninja H2R, The legal limit doesn't exist. When Kawasaki unveiled the Ninja H2R in the year 2015, it wasn't just a motorcycle launch, it was a declaration of war on speed limits. This machine wasn't built for roads, and it certainly wasn't built for casual riders. It was engineered for one thing only: outright domination on the track. At the heart of the H2R lies a 998 cubic centimeter inline-4 engine, but this was no ordinary four-cylinder. Kawasaki bolted on a centrifugal supercharger, unleashing an astonishing 310 horsepower and 115 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers made the Ninja H2R the most powerful production motorcycle ever created. Its top speed, over 240 miles per hour. But hitting that kind of velocity comes with consequences. This bike accelerates from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 2.5 seconds. The force is so brutal that any lapse in rider input, any twitch, hesitation, or miscalculated move can send things spiraling out of control. The H2R features a high-tensile trellis frame with carbon fiber fairings, aerodynamic winglets, and a swing arm designed to manage all that power. The suspension is top tier. Showa balance-free forks up front and a fully adjustable Showa shock in the rear. The braking system uses massive dual front discs with Brembo calipers and a single rear disc, offering phenomenal stopping power. Weighing just under 476 pounds wet, the Ninja H2R carries a power-to-weight ratio that few machines, 2 wheels or 4, can rival. It is not street legal. It is not forgiving. It is not meant for anyone but the most focused, highly trained professionals. At a starting price of $55,000, this bike isn't just exclusive, it's excessive, dangerous, and borderline unhinged. But before the H2R stole the spotlight, another Japanese superbike delivered similar brute force, but wrapped it in stunning design. Let's look at the next entry that proved beauty can be deadly. Number 2. Yamaha FZR1000. The pre-R1 nightmare. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, the Yamaha FZR1000 was one of Japan's earliest attempts at building a full-liter superbike for the street. Its reputation was built on raw performance, but for many riders, the FZR1000 was also a lesson in how too much speed and not enough control could turn every ride into a high-risk gamble. At its core was a powerful inline 4-cylinder engine displacing 998 cubic centimeters, producing 145 horsepower and 78 pound-feet of torque. Formidable numbers even by today's standards. The FZR's acceleration was blistering, but what truly caught riders off guard was how the rest of the motorcycle struggled to keep up. Its frame, a steel delta box design, was considered advanced for its day, but still too flexible under the strain of aggressive cornering or sudden throttle input. At high speed, especially in the upper triple digits, mid-corner bumps could send the chassis into unsettling wobbles that even experienced riders had trouble correcting. Weighing in at just under 590 pounds wet, the FZR was light enough to be quick, but heavy enough that its suspension had to work hard. Unfortunately, the suspension components, standard telescopic forks in the front and a monoshock in the rear, were basic by modern standards and lacked the refinement needed to handle the bike's full potential. The brakes, featuring dual front discs and a single rear disc, were decent but lacked the stopping force required for a bike capable of reaching over 165 miles per hour. With a retail price starting at $7,499 back then, the FZR1000 was a tempting high-speed option for thrill seekers. But unless you were highly skilled and constantly alert, this Yamaha could easily cross the line from excitement to chaos. We've saved the worst for last. A Japanese bike so flawed, even professional racers refuse to ride it hard. Number 1. Suzuki GSXR750 S-Rad. Light, fast, and deadly. By the late 1990s, Suzuki's GSXR750 S-Rad was seen as a game-changing sport bike. It introduced an ultralight chassis paired with a powerful 4-cylinder engine and was marketed as a race bike for the street. But for all its speed, this motorcycle had a darker side that riders quickly discovered, one that earned it a place at the very top of the danger list. The engine was a 748 cubic centimeter inline 4, producing 134 horsepower and 66 pound-feet of torque. Combined with its minimal weight, this gave the Srad a near-perfect power-to-weight ratio, Perfect for lap times, not always for survival. What made the GSXR750 so dangerous was how sensitive it was to rider input. Weighing just 465 pounds wet, the frame was exceptionally light, but that lightness came at the cost of stability. The bike would react instantly to the slightest twitch of the handlebars, making it feel nervous and unstable, especially at high speeds or while leaning into corners. Riders described it as twitchy, overreactive, and in many cases, terrifying. The suspension system consisted of adjustable inverted forks up front and a rear monoshock, but even with tuning, the bike would exhibit headshake under hard acceleration or fast corner exits. Without a steering damper, many riders experienced tank slappers, violent handlebar oscillations that could quickly lead to crashes. The braking system, with dual front discs and a single rear disc, offered strong stopping power, but it did little to correct the fundamental handling issues that made the bike unpredictable when pushed hard. At a base price of $8,399, the GSXR750 SRI was competitively priced and extremely attractive to young riders. But many of those riders found out the hard way that this was not a machine for casual thrills. It demanded perfection and punished anything less. These machines weren't just bikes. They were battles between man and machine. Some won, many didn't. Think we missed a death machine? Drop it in the comments. Like if you learned something new, and subscribe so you never ride blind again. Never ride blind again.